Welcome back. Today we're going to get the garboard attached and do a little steam bending. All that's coming up on this episode of The Art of Boat Building. My name is Bob Emser. I'm a sculptor and a boat builder. My sculptures have always been inspired by nautical and aeronautical imagery. In fact, sometimes people passing by my studio would ask if I'm building a boat. I've always enjoyed the artistry of wooden boats. It seems like I've been building boats for over 40 years, and now I'm building sculptures that float. Welcome to the Art of Boat Building. I'm getting some clamps on here to pull this garboard nice and tight to the rabbet here so that I could see how well it was fitting. I had noticed that the widest spot here is just a little more than 1/8 of an inch. So I cut a little piece of wood that I'm going to use as a spacer and go along and trace the entire length of the rabbet so that I can trim it off properly. And once that's completed, we can pull this plank off and trim it up with a block plane. Over here at the workbench, I've put a piece of stock underneath here to raise that up about 3/4 to an inch. And that way I can take my block plane and lay it flat against the table and then use that to scribe or to plane it on down to the line. That fits quite nicely. I'm going to take the plank off and trim up the top side of the plank, and then I'm going to use it as a pattern for the port side. Well, I tested the garboard over here on the port side to see how well it fit, and it fits really pretty close, so I'm going to use it as a pattern for the port side garboard. So one of the last things I want to do is to go along the entire perimeter of the garboard and roll it with this roller that I have that'll compress the fibers right along the edge here. So by doing that, I'll create a little bit of a channel for the cotton caulking to fit in there. One last test fit to make sure it all fits good, and it looks pretty decent. All right. Well, before I get the garboard set on there, I'm going to run a bead of sealant along the bed log here, and I'm using Total Boat Seal for this. It's a really good elastomatic sealant. It's good for surfaces like this. Once I've gotten the plank on the boat, I want to go through and mark the center of the frames so that I'll get the screws lined up. Once I have the center of the frames marked, it's time now to start fastening down. We're going to use some 1-inch bronze screws that are flatheads. And the reason we're using flatheads is because if you were to ever need to repair the plank and there was some compound in there, you'd be able to dig that compound out and easily work the compound out of that slot of the screw with a knife or something. If it was a Phillips head, it would really be in there pretty deep, so it'd be very difficult to get it out. So slot-headed screws are the standard that are used in Carvel planking. So what we're going to do first is to drill some holes, and we're going to do that with a tapered bit. Now this is a tapered bit specifically for a number 8 screw, and I've set it up so that it is just about an inch from the length of the screw there. So what we want to do is to start about an inch up and drill a hole. Now we want to countersink it enough that the head of the screw is buried, but not so much that we don't have any material left for it to fasten with. Now I have put a little wax on the end of my screws, and I do that by putting them in a toilet tank wax ring. That way when I pull it out, I've automatically got just the right amount of wax on the screw head. So we'll take the screw head and use the proper screwdriver, bit head, and insert it. One of the good things about putting them in by hand is you know that you get them in the right amount of pressure. If you're to use a power screwdriver, which you certainly could do with a slotted flathead on it, you might drive it too deeply. By having it with a hand screwdriver, you really can feel the pressure that it's putting on there. If you put it in there too tight, your really good fastener might turn into a really good wedge that as the wood swells up, that could actually make the wood split along here because that screw was in too deep. So we'll go ahead and put them in here along the bed log also. So again, I'm coming down about an inch. The screw. All right. We will, I will continue to fasten all the screws here amidship, and then we'll work on the 2 ends. One of my concerns in the back here by the transom is that when the plank comes in here, you can see that the transom curves, but the plank does not. So what I need to do is put more pressure in the center of that, and I'm afraid if I just do it with it dry, that I may get a crack in it. So what I'm going to do is to make a little temporary steam box just to steam the end of the plank. So after I've got it loosened up here, what I have here is a box that I just made with some 1-inch spacers, and it's about 9 inches wide. So I'm just going to slip this over the plank like that and set my steam hose in. And then stuff some rags in here to keep the steam inside the box. We're going to let that steam in there for about a half an hour and see where we're at. While waiting for it to steam, I created a small curved wedge to help apply the pressure. All right, that looks like it took it pretty well. You can tell it's a little curved in there. So in the meantime, I'm going to let that sit overnight and put a couple of clamps on here and pull it in and get these screws in here as well. Well, that's it. That's the last screw for this garboard. As I had mentioned before, I made a pattern for the other side, and I'm going to do pretty much exactly the same thing that I did with this one. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you the next time on The Art of Boat Building.